will say that, okay, coming back to debt structures, right? The way I see it when it comes to like the biggest debt instrument is basically like property, right? The why people like to buy property, right? And then they take like, let's say 25, 35 years. Essentially, if you think about it, right, it's basically just a hedge, where they basically just pay forward their entire lifetime income of rent. So for example, if you, let's say you start at 25, right, then assuming the average age of a person passes away for a man is around 85, so 60 you'll probably live 60 years, right? And then if you buy a house, okay, and the intention of this house is to stay, and if you take a loan for 25 years, at the end of 25 years you don't have to worry about rent anymore because your house is fully paid, right? So in this particular debt structure, right, when you talk about it, right, in essentially what you're doing is that you're just making sure that you're having a sort of an insurance policy, where in this 25 years you fully pay off your house. So if you start at 25, at the age of 50, your house is fully paid and you don't have to worry about rental in your retirement age, right? Because I think it is a key concern, right, for some people, right, that even though we say that it's better to invest in the equity market, it's better to invest in, let's say, like a high conviction stock, right? I think the fact of the matter is, right, for most people, I would say 99% of the people, they don't really have that discipline to continually invest into asset class that is extremely volatile, because history has shown over and over again, not just amongst like not just amongst like this Instagram personal finance which we started in the last 3 years, right, but throughout my history of doing personal finance, that every single time there is a market crash, all right, people tend to freeze up and they don't buy and they don't continue to DCA. Whereas if you buy a house, let's say, and to counter the argument that the house dropped 50%, right, I think end of the day it comes back down to the make sure when you buy, right, it is of you just need to make sure that the house that you're buying is of fair value. As what Stephanie said, the resale market is still quite like actually what Steph says has been saying this in this podcast, right, is when you buy something, right, just make sure that it is value valued. Like if you buy a car, you don't really need to buy a brand new car, you can just buy a second hand. Just make sure that you bolster your personal finance better before you can get a better one. Just get from point A to point B. Then when you buy a house, right, just make sure that you don't overpay for the house, right? Because if you are
Yes.
struggling like freaking like if you buy a house, right, and then your income is like, let's say 10,000 ringgit, if you're paying 8,000 ringgit to mortgage every month, you're over leveraged lah. Okay, because like 80% of your cash flow every month to pay off your house, and then you left 2,000 ringgit, right? I think you're just going to eat grass for
Yeah.
35 years, right? So that is not going to work, and then usually that also means that the house that you're buying is probably overvalued lah. Because just when I did a quick check with Ryan on the Airbnb prices, right, and he tells me like 5,000 ringgit is like on the extreme expensive end of things in KL, right? It kind of tells me that these people are quite desperate to make sure that someone else is paying off their overinflated property prices and their mortgage rates now. Because like I think 5,000 ringgit, I think like in terms of like mortgage payments, property value I think needs to be at least like close to 1 mil for it to justify that price. If you stretch it out for 25, let alone 35 years, right? So when you talk about debt structures, right, I would say that you need to find a structure that works for your particular case. Okay, I'll give a very two extreme ends of example. The first extreme end of example is, let's say, for example, you want to buy a laptop. Okay, for me, use my personal example. I want to buy a MacBook because I'm now traveling and I want to be able to work remotely. Okay, but then I have two options. The first option, right, is I were to buy a MacBook, I pay 100% cash, which I can afford. The second way is that I basically just use it as a rental piece and basically just take a personal loan, and then pay over 24 months. So which option would I prefer? Obviously, I prefer the second option because assuming the down payment for a MacBook is, let's say, about 5,000 ringgit, right? Or 1,400 Sing, right? And then the other option is I take an interest-free loan, which I can pay off in 2 years. Basically, there's no interest, and I basically just pay, I think it's $40, is it? I think $40 or $50 a month for 2 years. So basically, after 2 years, I pay off the thing completely, and then the existing cash flow every month, I just invest in the S&P 500 or invest in Bitcoin, invest in Ethereum. So this structure makes sense for me because basically it feels like I'm paying a Netflix subscription to enjoy the utility of the asset today, which I know I can pay off. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
this exactly happened to myself also. There was one time, like way before the GPU shortage, right? I was actually building a computer and I've got all the parts down already. It's just that one GPU, and I bought it just a few weeks too late, And then the seller decided to cancel on me thanks to Jensen from Nvidia raising all the card prices. Shout out to Nvidia, fuck you, Jensen. But anyway, I hate them with a passion. But what happened was the seller cancelled my GPU, so I was left with a computer, and I cannot find a GPU anywhere at that point in time. So I was
Mm.
forced to actually sell the computer. But this is the nice part. I sold it for a profit, and then also another thing was I actually funded the computer with my credit card. So after I sold the computer for a profit, right, I ate everything into Palantir, which is not the best asset that you can do it, but I did. But but still, with Palantir going down by like how many percent is that? It's like it went from like 24 my buying price to $8, but I still did not get margin call. So I would say like this debt structure actually works for me. And it's relatively safe leverage on the equity side of things.
Yep. Okay. Now, let's move on to the other side of the structure, right? Okay. So just now you mentioned, right, Ryan, about your modem arbitrage, right? Basically, you just take you paid off. You basically took a credit card loan, is it, or personal
Yep,
loan?
that's right. The credit card loan
Yeah.
on
So
the
so this
computer. Yep.
so this credit card loan, is it interest free?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to pay off in 2 years.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's
So
not 2 years, but like it's 12 months, but still it's a quite a small amount. Three,
mm,
4,000, and divide it up by like 12, you get like, I'd say like
yeah.
maybe 600-700 a month. That's not too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I guess like basically it just goes back down to what are you buying with this like debt, right? Because it's like, for example, usually credit cards, they sometimes they can offer you 12 months, 24 months to pay off something. Like, this particular mic I'm recording in, right? I actually like took a 24-month interest repayment because I don't want to pay one lump sum. I actually took a 24-month interest free loan to pay this because like I don't I mean I can pay lump sum, but I just don't want to. I want them to
Yeah.
I just want them to wait. I just want them to earn, I would just want them to like earn the money, on a monthly basis lah. So in a way, if you think about it, right, if let's say your outlay is like, 30, 40 like sing, a month, it kind of feels like a Netflix subscription, where you're
Yeah.
paying off like money. So I guess like, that's one way to like structure like small wins lah, but of course the other end of the structure spectrum, right, where you're talking about debt structures which are larger in size, most notably I think for most people is their mortgages, right? The key tenets which you mentioned is that make sure that when you buy a property, it is fairly valued, number one, and number two, what the amount of loan that you take shouldn't be so drastic and so dramatic, right? That basically it eats up even your own like makan fund because if you like Ryan mentioned, his car loan is like 33%. Then if let's say he take another like take another loan for the house, let's say it takes another like 30%. But usually banks will not allow you to draw down that much. Usually banks, they have like guidelines. They'll look at your income, look at your total debt that you have. And in Singapore, we have this thing called total debt servicing ratio, meaning that the amount of debt and cash flow you can take every month, right? Right now is regulated that you cannot exceed, I think, 40 or 50% of your cash flow monthly income. Singapore, we have those guidelines. So it's like when you go and take a loan from a bank in Singapore, right, they will basically just cross-reference every single loan that you have in your personal
Wow, I
capacity.
see.
And if it exceeds like 40 or 50%, the bank is legally not allowed to lend you more money.
That's a very good guideline there that protects the people from
Yeah.
overextending.
It serves two purposes. The first purpose is that it protects the people. And second purpose it does, right, is that it completely cuts off the legs for people to basically overinflate the asset prices. Because the banks who are not legally allowed to lend more money than what is reasonable for a person. You get what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Malaysia does this, but from what Stephanie has mentioned, I don't think this is very like much spoken about lah. So that's why every time Malaysians say that Singaporeans are quite blessed because our government is they take care of us. In a way, I won't dispute that lah. I will say that the Singapore government is quite good in making sure that the systems are here to make sure that it safeguards the people, right? Because 90% of our population here actually live in public housing, which is quite affordable because usually public housing, right, in Singapore, brand new, right, it ranges anywhere between 20 to 30% of our cash inflow. It rarely, very rarely exceeds that. Very rare.
20 to 30%.
Yeah. So for example, like, why a lot of Singaporeans, they buy houses in Singapore? Do you know why?
The monthly installment is less than the rental, right?
Yes, correct, completely. Yeah, this is the main reason why. Because when you do actually the numbers in Singapore, right, it is simply cheaper to buy a public housing than to actually rent out in Singapore. And you're talking about a price differential of about 30%. So for example, if let's say I want to rent a studio apartment in Singapore, right, 1 month is about, let's say, 1,008 about for a 500 square foot apartment, right? A studio apartment in Singapore, you get your privacy, everything. But if I were to buy a public housing, let's say I get a 4 room, right? That 1,008 is what I pay for a place, right? That is about 900 to 1,000 square feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so Singaporeans, as much as we like to complain a lot, our government very good one. I would say like, I mean, after speaking to many people across Southeast Asia, I would say that our government is quite up there one. In terms of like they make sure that um our basic necessities are taken care of lah. So there's nothing to complain. Even you can complain about the 99-year lease, being a lease, but end of the day, I would say that housing is affordable in Singapore. That's a bit funny to say lah, but that's kind of true. In the grand scheme of things, I would say that housing in Singapore is affordable, and it is
Relatively lah.
reasonable. It's
Relative.
relatively, and if there's any case in Singapore, right, the housing ever goes out of whack, right, the government usually steps in to make sure that it doesn't increase too much, like what they've did like in the last year or so. So coming back, in countries that don't really have like okay, not to shit on not to shit on Malaysia or any other Southeast Asian countries. So I don't want politicians come knocking on my door. You do have all these safeguards in wherever you are, right? I think end of the day it comes back down to good personal finance, as what Steph has mentioned, as that is before you buy, right? Just make sure that you look for value.
Yeah, it has to serve the purposes and the utilities you're going for the item, especially when you're buying a huge purchase like a home where there's really no way that you can afford the house with 100% cash and you have to take on a huge amount of debt. And I
Yeah.
guess we can segue to the next question here, which is the next topic here, which is